Welcome to the KTF studio. My name is Barbara Stratford. Pastor Mayer had to be away today, so I am filling in. I'm here to talk with Dr. Ingo Sorke, who is joining us in the studio today. Welcome, Dr. Sorke.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
I understand that you are with Southwestern Adventist University. What is your role there at the university?
I teach Bible classes at Southwestern Adventist University, Greek, New Testament, the life of Jesus, Christian beliefs, history of the Adventist Church, and the origin of the Bible. I pastored for several years before I started teaching, and I also have a church plant on the side where I'm head elder, but my main role is teaching scriptures to students from all backgrounds, really, Adventist, non-Adventist, different majors. A very challenging but rewarding responsibility.
Okay. What do you see are the key challenges that Adventism faces in the next few years?
I would say a twofold challenge. People from all backgrounds are recognizing that the world is in turmoil. Politically, geopolitics, financially, wars, rumors of wars, natural disasters. It looks like that the clock is ticking on planet Earth. And we have a church with a prophetic mission, message, lifestyle. And I'm afraid sometimes we don't utilize the knowledge we have, the insights, our heritage to the full capacity. And so we have a church now facing a crisis in the world, not quite prepared to meet it on an evangelistic level. Another challenge is, I think, internally. I've been a Seventh-day Adventist for 30 years now, and in the course of my lifetime as a believer, I've seen what I would call a De-Adventization going on, where our fingerprint and our signature message is watered down to where we are no longer a distinct movement, and with that we lose our identity. I think the challenge will be for the lay people to recognize that we need to rise up and engage in aggressive, gentle, if that's a contradiction in term, but loving missionary work to reach much more people than we have in the past. Our current church situation is where a lot of churches, the pastor runs the show, some elders are engaged in scripture reading and prayer, but our church members are sitting in the pew. A lot of them would like to do something, don't quite know how to engage in ministry, so I would say our challenge is from the outside, the world situation, and how to respond to that. But even more so, how do we engage our church members in active, meaningful ministry, not church politics, not arguing, not bickering against each other, but reaching lost souls for Jesus Christ and sharing our distinct Adventist message, three angels message in the world. That we need to address, we need to discuss, we need to pray and stimulate our church members to mission work.
How will changes to the message affect our mission?
I've seen it the last 20, 30 years, this de-adventization where we subtract our message from our mission, and then our message becomes meaningless because it becomes too generic, too watered down. And so these changes have, I think, really caused the loss of an entire generation of Adventists who don't fully understand and grasp our message and our movement. And the effect that has on our members is then that church membership, evangelism, reaching out to people loses its meaning since we don't have something in particular to offer. And sadly, sometimes our lifestyle does not match the message we had. Then an outsider looking in says, why should I make the big change and follow Christ and join this last day movement when it does not have a real effect in the lives of the people? So you see, we're facing a real challenge. We do have a message, we have a mission, but it is not fully carried by our members. At the same time, I'm very encouraged. In Europe, both in Europe and in the United States, I see a grassroots movement of church members realizing these have to be the last days.
They are.
You look at the world events, the condition of society. If this is not the beginning of the end, then what will be? And so we have a group of people now recognizing we need to wake up. We need to start studying the scriptures for ourselves. We need to be on our knees praying, and we are responsible to carry this work to the finish line. We cannot just rely on leaders and trained pastors, and they know Greek and Hebrew, they will do it. I think people are starting to realize this will not finish the work. The troops in the pew have to rally together, start engaging in ministry and outreach.
Good. What do you see is the prevailing attitude toward Ellen G. White?
It's interesting that you asked that. I did not grow up Seventh-day Adventist. I had never heard of Ellen White. And I lived with a Seventh-day Adventist family as a German exchange student. And on the shelf were books by Ellen White. I did not know who she was. I found her writings attractive, appealing, easy to understand, even though I'm English second language. And when I asked people, have you ever heard of Ellen White? I got various responses. I think we have two groups, maybe even three in the church, some who have discarded Ellen White altogether and ignore her writings. We have a group who knows about her, reads a quote here and there, but does not fully embrace the message she presents. And then we have a group who understands that she was a prophet sent by God in the same spirit that John the Baptist was sent, to prepare a people for the coming of Christ. What I see in the church is now a division where some people realize she was sent to prepare us for the second coming. We have an inspired roadmap called the Bible to take us so far. And if we had paid attention to Scripture, then God could have taken us home a long time ago. We were ignorant and we were arrogant. And God, in His grace and mercy, said, let me send the church another prophet before the end with a detailed map on the meaning of Scripture, what He really wanted to communicate, what we have ignored, a specific message on lifestyle, on Christian behavior, and also a deeply rich, devotional, inspirational content that inspires for your personal Christian life. And I think people are realizing we need to start mining the depth of both Scripture and what we call the spirit of prophecy. Again, we have ignored some of her counsel and suffer for it.
Yeah.
And we're paying the price for it, but I'm encouraged. There are people now interested in her writings. She's not just a 19th century New England historical figure, but now irrelevant, maybe inspirational, but no longer has a prophetic voice. I think people are realizing she has prophetic authority, starting to pay attention to her again. And it's unfortunate we do have pockets in the church that are completely ignoring her. And that creates a bit of a friction between those two groups. But I think her voice is absolutely relevant, and it would be well for us to pay attention to her again.
What role do you think that Adventist universities and seminaries play in this role, in the attitude about Ellen White?
A highly significant role. Students are at the most critical stage in their life. I think age 10 through 25 are the most formative years of a young person. And the role models of teachers are absolutely vital. They can make or break an attitude in a student towards Ellen White, for or against her. I attended one school, and sadly, I love the school, I love the teachers, but sadly we were given a lot of textbooks by authors that did not really understand our Adventist work. And I asked myself, why are we reading from authors that don't understand our message and our mission? And it took place not to make us deep thinkers instead of mere reflectors of other people's thoughts. Those books were introduced in place of Ellen White. It came at the expense of reading Spirit of Prophecy. And when you're realistic about it, our lives are very busy.
Right.
By the time you have actually, honestly, generally engaged with Scripture on a daily basis and read some spirit of prophecy, there's really not much time for other writings. I think we have a sufficient amount of spiritual data to carry us through the end in the writings of Scripture and the spirit of prophecy. What I've done in my teaching, I have to introduce scholarship, of course, background information, but I have intentionally on purpose reintroduced her writings to my students. And what is interesting is my non-Adventist students without an Ellen White background are quite receptive and open to her writings. In fact, let me share one example with you. On our campus, we had a pair of students from Jerusalem, Muslim Palestinian students. They had to take a religion class from an Adventist school, and they picked writings of Ellen White. And we thought, what are they going to think about Ellen White? They have no background on Sabbath keeping, no knowledge of spirit of prophecy. They were thrown into this upper division class on the writings of Ellen White. One girl wrote, Muslim girl, she wrote, I wished I had the spirituality of Ellen White when I was 17 years old. And so it is a voice, a prophetic voice that appears to people way outside of the traditional Adventist circles. Tremendous responsibility for our schools to uplift the spirit of prophecy.
How does our view and appreciation of Ellen G. White affect our ability to present the full message that God has given to His remnant people?
I've had people ask me, can I join the church? Can I become a Seventh-day Adventist but not believe in the prophetic gift of Ellen White? I personally don't think it is possible to be a fully functional Seventh-day Adventist and understand our message and mission without the heritage of Ellen White. The early visions at age 18, December of 1844, how she wrestled with the church leaders, how she went through personal disappointments.
Right.
She was a mother. She lost 2 children. She is not just a prophet who tells us about Scripture, she also has a deep human life experience.
Right.
And so from her writings, I see that she gives us prophetic guidance, but she's also highly valuable in matters of personal decision-making, choices in life, marriage and family, money matters, interpersonal relationships. I think it would be a tremendous loss for your own personal life if you discarded her writings and did not pay attention to that most important part of in our Adventist history. And so I think if people looked at it, not just what she says, but in what context she says it, how she says it, the entire historical development of the Adventist church, it is so inspiring, so attractive, and encouraging. I would not want to dismiss that in any form or way. I want to invite listeners and anybody listening in, if you've had a hard time with Ellen White, if you have misconceptions, preconceived ideas, you've read bad things on the internet, put all this aside and pull out some of her writings, Steps to Christ, Desire of Ages, and give her another chance.
What should be done to recover our message and mission?
We need to be on our knees. It is the 21st century. We have dragged things out for so long. We have gone in circles. We've wandered, I think, in the wilderness far too long. And to recover the pioneer fervor and excitement of the Advent movement, I think we need to be, first of all, on our knees and earnestly pray. And I'm not saying this just as a pastor, and we always say we need to pray more. I think the prayer needs to come at the expense of a lot of electronics and time on screens and social media. That is competing with our prayer life. I think we need to recover earnest personal Bible study. I read how the pioneers sometimes stayed up through the night wrestling with Scripture, with each other, backing off gently when there was disagreement, studying some more, and then coming back together with the Bible open. If I asked in the average Adventist church, how many of you have opened the Bible with somebody and studied in a positive, constructive spirit together, far too few hands would go up. I would also encourage that people need to engage in ministry and in the mission of the church. Otherwise, we're just fighting, discussing, arguing, and accomplishing nothing except negative emotions. And recently, I've discovered a fourth element of the Christian life that we have neglected. It is prevalent throughout the scriptures. It is mentioned dozens of times in the writings of Ellen White, and we're not doing it. Fasting. Matthew 17, verse 21 says, "This kind cannot come out except by prayer and fasting." And so in my personal life, I've just introduced this and with tremendous results. We have fasted as a church from electronics, from processed foods. Individuals are now engaging in fasting, and we are seeing actual miracles, spiritual turnarounds. People come up to me and say, "We've never done this before. I'm trying it out, 1 meal a week, 2 meals a day." A lady in my church just went through a 3 to 5 day fast. It is a challenge, but there are spiritual victories and breakthroughs won. And with those 4 simple steps, prayer, Bible study, engage in ministry, and now add fasting, I think that this work can be finished, the Spirit will be poured out, and we will be surprised what God can do through us and sometimes despite of us.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great pleasure for me to talk with you, and thank you for coming. And thank you for coming today. My name is Barbara Stratford. Have a blessed day.